Learn how to create templates with Docusign. Here, we upload a document and add the appropriate fields for buyers and sellers to sign. This is a training on setting up a template through Docusign. So assuming you have your contract or your document prepared, edited in Word, I recommend that you save it as a PDF document. We're going to go through from home to templates here, create template. We're then going to upload the file that we have. Let me go and drag that one in. So we have the right document. So I'm going to go to my documents folder, find the most recent. It's a PDF document of a purchase contract. So we'll call this purchase contract 1 seller. That's important to note here. So the first person that is going to hit this document is the buyer. That's going to be us. So having the buyer in first place is most important. Then we need to send it through to the seller. We could set default email addresses, but we don't want to do that right now. The buyer entity may change, the selling entity may change. Then we want to add additional people. We want to have a number of people that receive a copy of this document. So we're going to have 3 people. We're going to have, firstly, transaction coordinator, which in some cases is an internal employee in the company. We'll have the title company or closing attorney. And then we will also have maybe a copy to the CEO of the company. Each of these will receive a copy. And the purpose of setting the signing order is so that everyone receives it in order. If we didn't set the signing order, maybe the title company, TC, CEO would get a blank copy of the document as soon as we send that envelope, as they call it, for signature. So we're going to do this here. We got the buyer, seller, and then the CCs, the ones that are going to receive here. So we'll call this purchase agreement. When it comes out, it doesn't matter whether it's 1 or 2 people, they're going to see the same thing. We only need to see this at the top because this is what we see internally. Okay. Go to next. Now we get the property information and we need to fill out from, there's only 2 fields that have people signing or filling information. That's the buyer and the seller. Primarily, the information is going to be from us, the buyer. So we are going to put in a text field for the address that we're purchasing. I'm going to put another field in for the assessor's parcel number, the APN. That can vary by type from city to city to state to county. We're going to put the purchase price in. We're going to make it nice and big because from time to time, we may put mortgage balance plus. In this case, we're not including the subject to addendum. So we're not going to include that right now. We can do that in a subsequent edit. We will have some radio buttons or some checkboxes rather. So we're going to have a checkbox here. One of the nifty things with the way this works is we can only ever check one or the other. So we're going to click the plus so that we can link these 2 boxes so that the formatting or logic, the validation here, we can select at most 1. So there'll be no point in, we're going to select exactly 1 because we need to choose one or the other. That makes it a required field that we can't complete the contract unless we choose one or the other. And with the fact that we're going to have a purchase price that's approximate, maybe based on a mortgage balance, or exact, based on an agreed number, there may be a variable involved based on certain situations. So we'll do select exactly 1 of those 2. Earnest money, we're going to stick a text box here, and we're going to put a text box here so that we state that we'll deliver that to the title company within a certain amount of time from executing the contract. Execution of contract is when the second person signs the contract. It's not executed until the second signature is on there. We may not need all of these things on here, but we'll put boxes in. These are not required fields because we're not going to require that an existing first mortgage. We may want to set this to be a required field. So what I'm going to do, another feature with this, if I highlight all of these, I can change them all together from a required field to an optional field. Now, at the bottom of every page, we're going to have an initial field from the buyer and also one from the seller. So we're going to start using some of these fields now. Now, we may have another amount. I need to put some text in here so that we know there what's going on. But also we have these here. So we need another checkbox, similar thing. We're going to select, we're going to make these optional because we may not have the need to so we're going to say between 0 and 1 because we're never going to choose both of these. So we can either choose 0 or none. I'm going to make this one an optional field as well. Cash at close. This is going to be required because we are going to make sure that we put a 0 if there's going to be 0 cash at close. So we're clear on the contract to the seller that they'll be receiving 0 or something. We're going to say at least 1 because we'll do exactly 1. I think that's a better thing to do here. Close of escrow could be a particular date. And we'll just put a little box here for 2020, whichever year that's going to be. I'm going to put another one here. I'm just doing copy and paste here just so I can get a similar size box without much hassle. Copy and paste that one on it a little bit bigger. And then the next one here is, well, if we have a closing date, but there's like a divorce or a probate going on, we don't know the exact closing date, but we need to have a reference point so that we have a binding contract with a date. So what we'll do here is make sure that we state that we'll close within 30 days of the completion of the probate work or the divorce or whatever that time specific event is that we don't necessarily have a firm grasp on. We're going to use our checkboxes again. We are going to pick and choose these so that we can have, guess what, a maximum of 1, at most 1. We don't want any more of these. In fact, we're not going to do at most. We need exactly 1. So we're linking these. These are required. I'm going to make these optional because we don't know which of these is going to be the choice from there. Closing attorney, title company. It might behoove us to remove these lines in here at some point because sometimes you get, it looks like it's struck through, but that's just something that we'll leave for now, but bear that in mind. Contact information for the title company and the closing attorney or escrow officer. Do we have any HOAs, any associations we need to be aware of? We will fill that information out. Next is a seller field. So we're going to put in the name of the seller. That will populate based on what they type in. Their address, they will fill out in here. They will fill out their phone number and email address. It's a little time-consuming process, but it's amazing how much time this saves you from going through editing individual documents and playing around with stuff like that. That is a pain in the butt. This is a misalignment. I'm not really terribly happy with this, where we have the name of the buyer above the line. We're going to put, I'm going to just put a text field here, because depending on who and what is buying, it may behoove us just to leave that as a flexible field. But we will want to state where the state of the company is, whether it's a Wyoming or otherwise company. Just going to throw in the seller fields for initials. I'll go back to buyer so I don't forget. Now I'm going to make this I'm going to leave that as a field there. So buyer's address, I'll probably just make that a little bigger here. It's got a bit more space. So this is for the title company to understand how they're going to get hold of the buyer, who they are, where the vesting for the deed is going to be. So inspection period, we need that for sure. Now we also have some more checkboxes. Again, this will be one or the other. At most, exactly one. We may as well, hang on. We may as well copy and paste these. Interesting, it hasn't linked those as I copied and pasted them. So I'll take this one out. Take this one out. I'm just going to come back with this so we can get the link here. So we have to select one of these. Select exactly one. Now, there may be 3 options in some of these down here. So we're going to do this one. So we choose again, exactly one. This is exactly one. And we're going to go here. And exactly one. Just make sure I did it there. So these are all going to be individually, these are going to be independent of one another. So the fact that we have seller acknowledgements is very likely we're going to have those. That will be mandatory. This one will be a so we'll have a minimum of 0 or 1 chosen on those. I think that we can even at most 1. So they don't have to choose that when it's not a required field. As far as I understand, I may eat my words on that. So additional terms and conditions, net to seller. I'm going to do another one here. At most, at least 0 is what the default is on these. So that just is validation to say at least 0. So it's not going to complain if nothing's there. I'm just going to leave that as that moving forward. Any loans, we need to note here, mortgage, what do you call it? The loan numbers, the banks, that kind of stuff. Just going to flick over to a seller field for an initial. So we will do another checkbox. This is not a required field, but we're going to put a non-required box here. Let me dump this down here. I picked that one up accidentally. In fact, let me go back because there is a reason I won't do that because of how that goes. So we'll link these two. Now I'll drag the checkbox over here. So it will not be a required field. But these are linked. We won't be, so we'll have at most, well, exactly one. So it'll be one or the other. These boxes will be optional. So I'll make those optional all at once, just in a moment. So I'll do those, remove the requirement. So we'll have 3 here, but we will select exactly 1. In fact, at most 1. Because if this isn't necessary during the transaction, if we're not doing a hybrid, we don't want those to be a required field. I like, and I will on a future version, change this to months because I want to be doing this on months instead of years, because 2.63 months doesn't really help us greatly. If we have an amortization period, if a seller wants $250 a month for a certain period of time, it doesn't help us to have 10 years if it's only, 117 months or something along those lines. So that'll be something that I update in future. I'm going to also make this one a non-required field. So I'll copy and paste this one because that's not a required field here. Back to checkboxes. We will do those. Again, at most 1, but we're not going to require those to be done. So I'm personally not keen on having directly to lender, or we can do this where we've got to lender or servicing agent. If it's a seller finance, direct to lender is going to be the seller. So that's not so much of an issue. We're going to say it exactly 1. In fact, at most 1. At most 1 on those because they're not required. We'll state the servicing company that we're going to use. Generally, it's Weststar or Evergreen. So I will, again, remove the requirement for that one. I'm going to pop this back to buyer. So again, that's at most 0. Seller carryback. Again, not required field. We're going to do so hybrid, that's including another loan. This will be a separate one here. So these again will not be required. So that one's checked. I've got to actually update the template for that because it may be possible that we don't have an interest-only loan where we need to be paying something to the seller. and not just interest-based. So I've just updated that on my other document there, so I know that moving forward. Check boxes. This will be at most 1, but we also need to have 3 of these. A text box there for the number of years. Again, I'll change that to months because we might need 5.6 months or something like that. That will be a non-required field. These are at most 1. This is good because if we have a payment holiday where we're not starting to pay right away, maybe it's like Eddie Speed teaches, just to get a larger upfront down payment and have a holiday on payments for maybe 5 years or so. That's a really good way of doing it. Pace calls it the Morby method, but we can call it the Tristan method if we want. Again, make these non-required. Servicing company. Listing agent for seller. Seller was represented by the following agent. So we're just going to acknowledge, an agent involved, and they would be compensated by the way that we outline in here. Had some great agent conversations in recent weeks. I'm going to make all of these non-required shortly. Easy to do all of those at once. We'll have a checkbox and some more text. This might outline anything we need to do to negotiate probate, any details on probate itself that is being done with attorney, any information like that that we might need to list. It's common for, with my probate transactions, I have a relationship with the attorney where we can make a payment towards the probate being started, and we just then get invoiced at closing to pay the remainder, which is really, really amazing. Thanks to Rylas and the other attorneys we work with that allow us to do that. It allows things to work a lot more streamlined. We're going to put that in there. That'll not be required. Real estate license disclosure, principals, owners, members, managers, or employees of buyer hold or do not hold real estate license there. So this will be so we need to disclose if we have a license. So will I say at least 1? I think we've done the most of this at this point. Almost put the wrong one on there. So I'm looking out here for the septic inspection or the septic statement wastewater. And here it is. There, that's updated. Soon we'll see the information about the lead-based paint disclosures, whether it was built before or after 1978. This is probably going to get removed. and I'm not keen on this here at all. This will have some text in it. It won't be required because we really won't be filling this out or giving the option for that, at least not in states that don't enforce such an opportunity. The document was just really generally written for sort of global use, or not global necessarily, but around the United States. So we will have the company, which we will say is a Arizona, Texas, Florida, whatever kind of limited company, by the name of the person signing and their title in the company. That's what "it's" means. And then we're going to have the date signed, which is the execution date for us, the buyer. Let me throw that one down there real quick. I'll come back to seller. And we do want to have, let me compare this to what I had up the top because I want to make sure it aligns with consistency as the buyer. So we had the buyer, I did text down there, so I'm going to match that and I'm going to do text here instead. So that way, if we are not an entity buying, if it's an individual that we're putting on here, we can do that. So so we did forget the buyer's signature, which will go here. We'll do seller's signature here on the date signed, and we'll have their name. Oh, this is for, so we'll put full name here. This would be for a second seller. So we're going to leave that blank, but we'll come back to that in a little bit. Effective date on the contract will be the seller's signing date, not the buyer's signing date. Again, I am going to leave this blank as far as I'm going to put text, which is not required text in here. So to cancel the document, sign and send to this, which will be our company name or the buyer's name. I'm going to leave that as all optional over here. There we go. So seller, that's just going to go in there. And that's the template completed. So save and close. This is the fun part because now we go and copy this one. Now we make it for two sellers. And we just go through here. We'll add a signer. And we'll put this in third position. We'll make the CEO fifth now. So we've got seller 2, seller 1. Make that fourth position. So buyer, seller, seller, and everyone else that also got a copy. This one's a lot quicker because all we need to do now is look at seller 2, bring an initial down here, and we bring the second seller's name in here. We do this one here, initial, and we're just going to add that second initial to all of these, the signature field down the bottom where we saw earlier. And then we've got 2 templates made out of one without having to go through the whole process a second time. So now the second seller's information and date signed. In fact, one thing that I'm going to change up where I need to is, like I said earlier on, the execution time and date of the contract is that of which the seller signs. So now, because there are 2 sellers, I'm going to change it to the second seller's signing time, because obviously we don't want it to show as executed on the time that the first seller signed. So that's that one completed. Now we've got 2 contracts.